They could,
Interesting.
but we only have 5 from each side. So
Gotcha.
obviously,
Okay.
we have the discretion to say, you know what, we're
Yeah.
going to hear from the 5 people who actually have a stake in this.
Right, makes sense.
It's unusual to have somebody come who doesn't have some sort of stake in
gotcha.
the outcome.
Now, does the offender have what would be analogous to a spokesperson or a lawyer or something like that? Or are they there by themselves?
Well, so in the institutions, they do not have a lawyer for their parole hearing, their initial parole hearing. For the lifer hearings, there are some lawyers who get involved. I would say maybe 20% of the hearings have a lawyer.
Okay.
And there are private lawyers who do that work, and there are also 2 or 3 law schools who have clinical programs so that their students have a clinical piece of the class in which they represent a life sentence inmate who's appearing before the parole board.
Now, as chairman of the board, are you at some of the hearings around the state, or are you just there for that when all 7 are convened?
So most of my time is spent, I have to manage the whole agency.
Sure.
So I'm not out there that often at a House of Corrections or at the state facility. So I do the life sentence hearings. Every Tuesday we have 3 life sentence hearings.
Okay.
And then a couple other days a month I get out because I enjoy getting out, and I think it's important to see how individual hearings go.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm doing life sentence hearings on Tuesday, and the other days of the week going on television shows or speaking or
Right.
things like that, and other aspects of managing the agency.
Right. So a few months back, or may have been longer, so we in the news they were talking about the number of folks that were not being afforded parole. There is not like a set number or criteria that says, okay, in any given year, so many people have to be released or not. There's nothing that has a stipulation that says that, is there?
That's correct.
Right.
What there is the legislature and the governor years ago set a legal standard for parole. So the parole board members don't just go into an institution and say, oh, I like that person or I don't like that person.
Right.
What the parole board member is doing is seeing if this person meets the legal standard. And the legal standard has 2 prongs. The first one is that the individual, it has to be unlikely that he would reoffend if paroled.
Right.
And that's more specific. The second prong is more general, which is the release has to be compatible with the welfare of society. So those are the 2 prongs of the legal standard. Our current paroling rates are at the House of Corrections is about 59%. So about 59% of inmates at a House of Corrections, and this is all around the state. Every county has a House of Corrections. About 59%. So obviously your chances are better than 50-50. What I like to say is our paroling rate for people who have earned parole is 100%. And that people who are working hard, who have the right attitude, who have really decided, I want to do something different from my life. I mean, those are the people that we're trying to identify. People who have decided, I want to do something different. And that's what parole is there for, is to help those people and get them out of incarceration early so that they can get into the community, start rebuilding their lives, and not just rebuilding their lives with no help, but with a lot of help if that's what they need.
Do you find that it's more difficult for individuals that are being released from a state prison versus a county facility to reintegrate themselves in society? What I'm speaking about specifically here is you'll hear that term that they've been institutionalized, that they're more comfortable, which sounds a little, maybe off color, but they can survive or do better inside a facility than outside of a facility. Do you find that there's a difference between the two insofar as integration back into the community successfully?
I'm familiar with the term institutionalized, and it's exactly as you describe. It's applies to people who've been incarcerated for a longer period of time and have gotten used to not making certain decisions because the Department of Corrections makes those decisions for them.
Right.
That's definitely part of what happens, is certain people just they can't redevelop those skills. We do have certain programs that try to help people redevelop those skills. We recognize that and don't just leave those people out there without assistance. We do have assistance for them. I would say one of the things that helps the Department of Corrections inmates is most of them are older. And a lot of people who work in this field who have devoted their careers to working with people who are reintegrating in the community will tell you that sometimes it takes a little while for the light to come on.
Right.
And somebody who's 32 and who had a family that they blew up their family life because they got sent back to prison for something, that person may be in a better position and more ready to rehabilitate than somebody who you had in your facility for 60 days, wants to
Right.
get back out there, 17 years old,
Right.
doesn't really have built up the same stake in the community.
Exactly,
So a lot of it depends on what somebody's attitude is and where they are in their stage of life.
So talk to me about the parole board members, not individually, but how are they chosen?
So the governor nominates parole board members, and so that is entirely within the discretion of the governor. And once he nominates somebody, that parole board member has to be confirmed by a body called the Governor's Council.
Yeah.
And the Governor's Council is an independent group
Right.
of elected governor's counselors. And that is the same group, the Governor's Council, that has to confirm judicial nominations. So parole board members and judges go through the Governor's Council.
And what is the term for a parole board member? Length of time that they can be on the board?
So the term is 5 years.
Okay.
And then you would, if you wanted renomination and the governor selected you for renomination, you could go for another term. There are no term limits. You can, but most people do it for 5 to 10 years. One of the things Governor Patrick has really worked hard with, and very successfully, I think, is to get the right type of backgrounds represented on the board.
Right.
For example, Governor Patrick chose a forensic psychologist. It's the first time that a forensic psychologist has ever sat on the parole board. And a forensic psychologist is someone who is specialized in certain aspects of criminal behavior, criminal conduct, the psychology associated with that. So that's been extremely helpful to us to have that expertise. The governor also selected a victim witness advocate, somebody with a tremendous amount of experience in helping victims, seeing cases, understanding things about domestic violence, about substance abuse, because this woman has knowledge through her long experience as a victim witness advocate of these issues, as well as how crime can impact victims.
Now, does the same 5-year term apply to the chairman?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Now, are you enjoying this?
I do enjoy it. It's I find it very challenging. It's a statewide agency, and there are multiple functions, as we've discussed. There's the voting on people's cases, but there's also the supervision. So those things all add up to make it challenge, but I do enjoy it. And one of the reasons is that there's so many different people working towards a common goal. And you know this, that the same person you see is going to be the same person I see, might be the same person that Commissioner Spencer at the Department of Corrections sees, same person that's seen on probation. And we're all trying to do similar things to help the person so that eventually they get out of this life and into a more productive life. And that's been one of the values of the job, I think, is working with the various partners, all of whom see this goal of reducing recidivism as being a very important part of what we can give to the community.
Beautiful. Listen, Josh, we're out of time. I really want to thank you for coming on today and telling our audience just how that system works and that department works, because it's crucially important, particularly for folks cycling out of any of these houses of incarceration.
Well, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain things, because it is an important part of our criminal justice system, and I'm always pleased to get the chance to talk about it. So thank you.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. All right, folks, on the other side of the break, we're going to interview Revere Police Chief Joseph Caffarelli, so please do stay tuned.